Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. Today is Tuesday, June 1st, and we're glad everyone is here tonight joining us. We'll begin this evening with an invocation by the Reverend Dr. Stephen Martin, First Baptist Church, Kernersville.
Let us pray. Our most gracious and everlasting God, we are honored to invoke your presence with us this evening. We recognize the fact that oftentimes our prayers are inspired by the different life experiences that we are called upon to face. Sometimes we offer prayers of lament, times when our hearts are heavy with sadness and sorrow. Sometimes there are prayers of challenge, occasions when we look for guidance and direction and strength to endure. Sometimes we offer prayers of joy. We are blessed with happiness and hope. But tonight, we offer prayers inspired with thanksgiving. We're grateful. We're grateful to be together. We're grateful to see faces that smile, people to interact, knowing that we have come a very long way. We also know that we have a way to go, but our hearts are truly grateful to be together, to fellowship as people should fellowship. So as our hearts are filled with thanksgiving, we are grateful for our leaders, grateful for our community and our homes, grateful for the freedoms that we share as a people and as citizens of a great nation. So let us offer these prayers of thanksgiving, thanking you for the privilege and the power of prayer, but also for the blessings and the beauty of life. For it is in your gracious and holy name we offer this prayer. Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right, we will begin this evening with information from Steve Mabe regarding the Mount Gurr Cemetery Association. Mr. Mabe, we appreciate all of your hard work and dedication towards the Mount Gurr Cemetery and welcome you here tonight.
Thank you. I try to do this every year, but we had COVID, and so we've skipped a year. And the board here has most of the information already, but this is for general public in particular. I'm Steve, like I said, I'm Steve Mabe, Mount Gurr Cemetery Association president, and we're a nonprofit established May 7th, 1894. This was adjacent to Kernersville Public Cemetery, which was formerly Kernersville Public Cemetery of Stokes County. It's located on Bodenhammer Street, for those that don't know, beside the fire department and Civitan Park. In September of 2018, the town agreed to my request to furnish board members to the association. No, that's not an easy task. This request was because of the business model of 1894 that failed in 1924, when nonprofit corporation status was not renewed because of death of the board members, retirement of the board members, and lack of interest. So it went for 44 years with temporary board members, individuals being taken care of it. And then it was in 1968, another group of citizens formed another nonprofit corporation, and it went for another 30 years exactly. 30 years exactly. There was one member left, and that was Moyer Wicker, who recruited me and a few other folks around town. And then it went for another, it went from 1998 to 2018, and I was the only person left, and that's why I came to the board of town of Kernersville. I said, this is not working. It hadn't worked since 1894, and it's not going to work again. The town graciously agreed to furnish board members, but they have just about as many problems recruiting board members as I did. But Curtis got drafted, my son got drafted, and we've got a few volunteers, and we are functional now with 7 volunteers, and we'd like to have a few more specialists, but we can survive with what we've got right now. The board members are Curtis Swisher, a draftee, Jim Taylor, Lynn Moore, Lil Williams, Jeff Barnes, myself, and my son Seth Mabe, who was a draftee. I had to have him just in case something happened to me when there was only one person to sign checks. So let me give you some significant statistics. We have about, believe it or not, about 25,000 visits a year. Not visitors, but visits. And there may be up to 30,000. Florists estimated between $75,000 and $85,000 of flowers are placed there every year. About $60,000 to $80,000 worth of monuments are placed over there every year. Pierce Jefferson and Hayworth Miller are the main contributors to the functions at the cemetery. But Roberts Funeral Home and Salem Funeral Home have started coming out of Winston and Lexington here also. We sell about 75 grave plots per year. We have about between 45 and 50 burials over there a year now. Several former residents, and this is kind of an anomaly, have bought grave plots without seeing them. I've got, in the last month and a half, I've got from Texas, Mississippi, and Louisiana, and West Virginia without seeing them. And I think it's because friends that live here in Kernersville have told them about the upgrades to the cemetery, and we sold them. All right, significant cost in the last few months, and we're computer design of the new sections of the cemetery, surveyor cost for the new section, entrance design, and this is a big one, disconnect an illegal water line that had been there since the 50s. It sprayed about 500,000 gallons out from under it when we hit it with a fence. Fencing, putting a new road in, rock work on the front for lettering to the entrance, about $25,000 more or less in upgrades to the cemetery and expansion, because we'd ran out of room in the what I call the old section of the cemetery. Our perpetual care fund was started by Maud Kerner Ring somewhere in the 1960s, but I can't get any documentation on it right here, but that's my belief that she started that and also paid for all the maintenance in the 60s and part of the 70s. I've talked to actual people that were school kids that worked for her during that era. Grave plots then were only $10 a shot, so there wasn't much perpetual care, and somebody apparently, and I believe it to be Maud, put some money into start the perpetual care fund. She started it. James Reed Edwards maintained it until 1998 upon his passing. Larry Kane and myself took it over in 1998, and Larry retired in 2017, and I've had it since 2017. In my opinion, if it weren't for Larry Reed and Maud Ring, there would be a weed field over there right now. One additional thing I get asked all the time, we are not associated with East Lawn Cemetery, and we will not purchase any grave plots that you have purchased at Mount East Lawn Cemetery or trade for them. So just make that one clear. I guess that's a lot. Anyone wishing to donate to the Perpetual Care Fund, including the town of Kernersville, can send a check, and it's tax deductible, to Mount Gurr, P.O. Box 1734, Kernersville, North Carolina, or you can see me or one of our board members. And that's all I've got. Does anybody have any questions? This case is closed.
Are there any questions? Thank you for your presentation and the information. Kenny, did you have a
I've
question?
just got a comment. I'd like to thank Steve. I played at Kernersville School on the ball field, and then he jumped across the street after he got too old and too clumsy to play ball anymore and took over the cemetery. And I have to commend him. He has did a super job there, and him talking about the visits that we have and the history of that cemetery is wonderful. And I'd like for people to know, and that we need to contribute to that. We need to keep it clean and help him to maintain it, and something that we can all be proud of. All my dad's family, except for one, is buried in this cemetery.
There's been 3 caretakers since I've been there, and I forgot their names, so y'all have a nice
Yeah.
day.
He's as old as I am, so y'all have to forgive the old boy.
Jack Mitchell died on the job. He was the first one there. He died on the job maintaining it. And we've got a really good crew right now of Smith Family Monuments. So anyway, appreciate everybody's time.
Let me ask
Thank
you
you,
one
Steve.
question, Steve. You might have said this. How many plots are over there?
About 8,000.
8,000. And how many are left? I mean, how many are?
Right now, there's about 1,200.
Okay.
And we're landlocked. So once it's full, it's full. That's why we're pushing this perpetual care fund that Mom started, that we believe Mom started, even though it's not in the minutes right here. But
Do you know what the oldest grave marker is over there?
No, I don't. But there's in what was called Kernersville Public Cemetery of Stokes County, or in Kernersville Public Cemetery, there were 12 of them marked with field rocks and field rocks only. And I suspect, since it said Stokes County, that it was before 1849 that somebody was buried there. But the oldest marked ones were a Linville family that died during the Civil War, like 1864, and I think there were 3 of them there.
Yeah.
And they're actually marked.
Well, thank you for all you do.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right, we are to the public hearings. Today we have a public hearing on the budget, the proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2021-2022. When an agenda item is denoted as a public hearing, persons attending shall be permitted to address the Board of Aldermen regarding the item under consideration, those speaking in favor speaking first, and those against speaking second. Proponents and opponents shall each be given 20 minutes of time to speak and may choose to allow one speaker to utilize the time or allocate the time amongst different speakers. The full directions are on the front of the agenda. But it's a 20-minute time limit for each side, of favor or opposed to the budget. And we'll begin, though, with a presentation by our town manager, Curtis Swisher. Curtis has been working with the department heads in town, speaking with the elected officials, and bringing the experience from previous years to the task. But they've been working on this budget since January. We had a full review of the budget at our previous meeting, and so now as a presentation, The actual budget is available online at the Town of Kernersville website, toknc.com, or it can be viewed by calling the clerk, Keith Hooker. Raise your hand, Keith. And making an appointment to see the budget. So with that, Mr. Swisher, if you'll proceed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll start out by saying, when we started this budget, it's like I told the board last week at the budget workshop, we really weren't sure what impacts COVID would have on the 21-22 budget. As you all remember, for the current fiscal year, we had some big impacts from COVID, mainly in our sources of revenue. And so the budget for this current fiscal year was not really a great budget, not what we really wanted to see when we put it together, but one that we figured in the end is what it would be. So we went into 21-22, as Mayor said. We started working on this budget in about January. It's when the department heads started working on it. But even before that, as early as really about time we passed the current budget year's budget, we started thinking about 21-22, what impacts COVID would have, how long those impacts, how long we would see those, and what it would do to the 21-22 budget. Ultimately, in the end, in the budget that you have before you, we were pleasantly surprised that we don't think COVID will have very much of an impact on the budget that you have presented to you tonight. All of our revenue sources seem to be coming in higher than what we projected for 2021. So we're basing our 21-22 numbers off of that. And it looks like the budget, if everything holds like we have, that the budget will be a pretty good year. The proposed budget, as you can see, is a little over $39 million. That is an increase from the current fiscal year of about $5.5 million. That's mainly because, and I'll cover it a little bit later on, of the capital projects that's in this budget that we're recommending. I've told the board several years, ongoing now, that we've got an operating budget and we don't have a separate capital projects budget. So any large capital project that we do is one that has to be in the regular operating budget. So what that does is it really kind of restricts how many capital projects you can do, when you can do those. It really restricts the timing. But we are fortunate, and I'll cover them here in a little bit, that we have some in there for this year, or recommending a few. The proposed tax rate that we're recommending for fiscal year 21-22 is 55.9. That is a tax rate reduction. Our current tax rate is 57. So we're reducing it a little over 1 cent. That's in line with what most folks, that's what in line with some of them in the triad are doing. Some of them are going up. Some of them are leaving it the same. But we're recommending a reduction of 1.1 cent. That is coming mainly due to a tax revaluation. This is a property revaluation year. So what happens in that year is that Forsyth County comes in, they reassess the property values, the value of your home. Some cases that value increases, some cases it decreases, but we offset that with a revenue neutral tax rate. And so we're recommending this year a tax rate of 55.9. Questions always asked, will my taxes be more? Will they be less? What will that do? It varies. It varies for everyone, depending on how much your house actually went up, how much it decreased. There's no real tax rate that we can set that everybody in Kernersville will pay the same taxes, property taxes, that they currently pay. It's just really not going to happen. I'm not seeing it happen. Now, will somebody pay the exact same taxes? Probably, but the majority of the people in Kernersville will pay something a little different than what they're paying now. Let's see if I can. You can see there the tax base. This year it was $3.1 billion. For 21-22, we're projecting that tax base to be $3.6 billion. We take that tax base, figure out the tax rate. That tells you the amount of revenue that you'll generate from property tax. The property tax revenues, that is our largest source of revenue. It's about 55% of the revenue that we generate in the town is from property taxes. So you can see it was a little bit of an increase from 2021 to 21-22. Kernersville was fortunate. We continued to have a lot of growth last year, from late 19 through 2020 all the way to now. And you'll see that reflected in some of the other revenue sources. But we've not seen much of a slowdown in growth, even with COVID. It didn't slow down as much as we thought. The housing market is very strong. For those of you that keep up with the housing market and see the trends in that, it's as strong as it's ever been in Kernersville. Still seeing some good commercial industrial growth. Retail sales are picking back up, as you'll see from the sales and use tax. So we're expecting good growth for 21, 22, and that's reflected in the tax base and also in the budget. Our projected revenues for fiscal year 21, 22, as I just stated, ad valorem taxes, $20.4 million. That makes up 51.8%. I said 55, I was off a little bit. It's 51.8%. That's up about 12% from what was approved in fiscal year 2021. Our unrestricted intergovernmental revenue is $9.5 million. The largest source in that category is sales and use tax. Sales and use tax increased greatly from what we projected for 2021. We projected that revenue low in 2021 because of COVID, and it's coming in right now. We're forecasting it to be more than what we projected for 2021. We based 21, 22 off of that, so we're expecting to see quite an increase in sales and use tax. The restricted intergovernmental revenue is up. It's $4.7 million. Most of that is loans for installment purchase. The more equipment, the more capital purchases you have, the larger that number is. That's why it's up. We had very few equipment and capital purchases this year in 2021. We're recommending more in the budget for 21, 22. So that number is up 170%. And that's the whole reason for that line item. Functionally related revenues is one of the two that are down, and mainly that's due to 4 areas. The commercial solid waste collection, as you all approved last year, maybe, we are eliminating that service. So we have revenues tied to that, but we also have expenses tied to it. But those revenues are reflected in the budget. They decreased this year because we're eliminating the service. We're also, we will experience a decline in the revenue from the rental amount that we get from our rental or from our towers. We've got some communications towers around town that we lease either ground space or space on the towers. The town sold one of those ground leases several months ago, so we're not getting that revenue source on a monthly basis anymore. And then we had our Parks and Rec revenues were down a little bit. We're projecting those to be down a little bit from what we budgeted for 2021. Quite frankly, we probably budgeted a little bit high in 2021. That hasn't came back as quick as we thought it would, so we're budgeting a little bit less in 21, 22. And operating grants, contributions, if those are down, the expenses associated with it are down. So it's not a big cause for alarm with them being down. That just means that we're not doing a project that has a grant that goes along with it. This is our revenues by source. As I just mentioned, sales and use tax is up almost $1 million from what was approved for 2021. Keep in mind, that was what was approved. We really, when we recommended that, it was low. It's going to come in about $600,000, $500,000 more than what we recommended or what we budgeted. So we're budgeting based on what we're actually projecting to collect for 2021. ABC tax, if there's one thing that stays strong, that's it. COVID didn't harm it at all. It just kept going up. And so we're projecting an increase of about $265,000. And that, in building inspections, that's the one I mentioned a minute ago. That's really what is a true indicator of the growth that we're having in town. We're anticipating that source to be up about $178,000 for 21, 22. And it may go up more than that. But we are projecting it to increase. We budgeted a little bit low for 2021. And as you all have seen in the budget amendments, and you have one tonight, we're making amendments for that revenue as it comes in. more than what we budgeted. So we anticipate that staying strong this year, and that definitely will help increase our revenues. I didn't flip over for y'all. There's that. Those that I just mentioned are there. Our expenses for fiscal year 21-22. This is by category. You have in your budget message in your book. I didn't show the chart on here because the folks out there, it's kind of hard to see. So I broke it out just by line item. The largest expense category that we have, as you can see there, is salaries and wages. It's about 45% of our budget. So this year it's about $17 million. The next largest one is committed operations and maintenance. Folks ask, what is committed operations and maintenance? As you've seen in the budget, there's line items in every department, departmental supplies, travel, training, software license, all of those things. Most of those make up committed operations and maintenance. So that line item is about 16% of our budget. Health and retiree insurance is another big one. And then committed payments. What's committed payments? That's equipment that has been purchased, either approved by you all or approved by a board before you all, that we're still making payments on. Most of the equipment that we purchase, we do it on an installment purchase, the same as what anybody does when they go buy a car. They're buying a car where we just happen to be buying a fire truck, in some cases a building. The payments are more. We're committed to those payments. Could the board not make the payments? Yes. Would it be good to not make the payments? Probably not. So we're committed to those payments. In the end, when you take into account all the categories that basically the board is committed or the town is committed to, it's about 90 to 95% of our budget. So, we hear all the time, you ought to cut your budget, you need to cut your budget, cut this, cut that. When you really look at what makes up the budget, there's very little room to cut the budget because, like I say, 90 to 95% of it. Most years it's 95%. This year it's right around 90 to 92. That's because we got some recommended capital purchases. It's hard to cut that small percentage. When you're talking about a $40 million budget and you're talking about 3% of it, 5% of it being flexible, it's pretty tough to cut out a significant amount. So that's all of the categories you'll see down there at the bottom. The new installment purchase is recommended right around $3.2 million, and the payments associated with that's about $508,000. So you can go out and you can buy $3 million worth of equipment, and your payment's $500,000. It's not the $3 million that impacts the budget; it's the $500,000 that impacts it. And this is the departments. This is every department in the town of Kernersville. Some departments have multiple divisions, public services being one of those. And all of these here on this page are really our internal service departments. This is all of our smaller departments, governing body, admin, community development, human resources. All of these departments are, they make up about 1% to 2% of the budget for their total spending. The larger departments are on this page. Police department, fire rescue department, public services, parks and rec. The largest department this year, when you take into account stormwater is a fund by itself. It's an enterprise fund. So anything that goes through that fund does not impact the general operating budget, doesn't impact the general fund. But that's a division under public services. So when you take into account stormwater, this year public services is the largest department from a budget standpoint. Police department's next, fire rescue is right after that. They're all right around $9.7 to $9.2 million. They account for about 73% of the budget. So again, when folks say, why don't you cut the budget, I ask them, what do you want to cut? Streets, police, or fire? That's about what it boils down to. If you're talking about cutting 1% out of, a smaller department, there's nothing there to cut. So those three departments, and when you put Parks and Rec with them, it's about 80% of the budget. Police, public services, fire rescue, they account for about 81% of our employees. Those three departments together have about 220 employees out of about 270. So, you've got three departments, again, your three largest departments in town account for a big percentage of the budget and a big percentage of the employees in the town. So cutting the budget, which is, what you always hear, is not quite as easy as it sounds when you look at what really would be eliminated from that budget. This is the expense recommendations for fiscal year 21-22. I've broken it out by salaries and benefits, recommended positions, and in capital purchases. Salaries and benefits, we're recommending a 2% cost of living adjustment this year. We did not have one in 2021, so we're recommending 2% for 21-22. We're recommending the 401k remain at 2%. We're also recommending increasing the minimum starting pay to $15 an hour for full-time employees. We're at $14 an hour right now. The board increased it for 2021 to $14 an hour. We're recommending going to $15 an hour. I will tell you that still, I'm not sure that how many folks will be able to hire at $15 an hour right now, because you can draw unemployment that's equivalent to about $18 an hour. So we're not paying what you can make sitting at home doing nothing right now. So, used to we were competing against other municipalities and against the private sector for employees. Now we have a new competitor in that group, and it's unemployment. They have probably a little bit more attractive benefits for some folks than what we do. We are recommending the pay study, the developmental pay, stay in the budget. It's been in there since 1998. This year it was the fire rescue department that was in the budget. Most of the positions in that department will see a 2 pay grade increase. And the big one that we're recommending this year in salaries and benefits is the creation of an on-site health and wellness clinic, which means basically we'll have a nurse here on site 3 days a week for employees and their dependents to utilize that service. We do have a couple of new positions that we're recommending, mainly just one full-time position. That's the one on the top. That's the facilities maintenance technician. That position will do the maintenance of all of our facilities. We currently have 2 folks. We need a third one badly. So we're recommending that position this year, but we're recommending that it start in January of 2022. And we are recommending 5 part-time firefighters to start in 21-22 as well. And one of our construction maintenance technicians that is currently frozen, that will transfer over to stormwater. That position works with the streets department, doing things like road repair, sidewalk repair, different jobs associated with streets, sidewalks, anything like that, any property, land that the town owns, the infrastructure in place for that. And we are recommending an increase in the amount allocated for the part-time position in inspections or part-time pay. As I've told you, the inspections is increasing. That means there's a lot more inspections to do. We can't handle that with the current staff that we have. We can handle it, but it's what it does is it just delays the time to get an inspection. So for us to keep up with the inspections, to keep the developers, homeowners, citizens happy, we need an extra person in here part-time doing that. It may very well be that, if inspections continues to stay strong, we come back in January and say, hey, we ran out of this part-time money. We need to go ahead and allocate some more. Here's a revenue kind of to offset it. So we don't know that yet, but we'll keep an eye on that and see how it works through January. Here's a capital equipment recommended, and you can kind of see the trend here. The 3 large departments are the 3 that get most of the equipment. Every now and then a smaller department will have to have something, and we recommend that as well. The police department, and I won't cover what these do. If you've got a question, I'll be glad to cover them, but I think I covered them all at the workshop. The police department, we've got 5 patrol vehicles that will be purchased with forfeiture funds. That just replaces one of our patrol cars that's already in the lineup. And we replace these based on the maintenance cost every year that we're experiencing with that vehicle, the miles on the vehicle, how reliable the vehicle is. So they have a list in every department of the vehicles that need to be replaced, and we replace them based on that. We don't replace one usually just, to replace it. It's got some it's time for it to be replaced when we do replace it. Also have an SRO vehicle that's per our contract with the school system, and the range building, that's the building out at our firing range. The one we have out there needs to be replaced, so we're recommending that this year. Information technology department, networking switches, that's basically what runs all of our hardware here at the town. And the courtroom cameras, that'll be cameras for the courtroom here, so that we can live stream the meeting for you, the meeting for the planning board, if they want to be live streamed. Anything that we take place, if it's in this courtroom, we can be able to live stream it. Parks and Recreation. Parks and Recreation is the one this year that you see the most capital equipment in. Parks and Recreation Center, that's the big one. It's been in the budget, been in request for several years. The board has talked about it for several years. It's in there. It's not under the Parks and Rec department. It's under capital project ordinances in the back. The building, we're getting it designed. We're looking at it now. It's around 50 to 55,000 square feet. It will be located at Ivy Redmond Park. Be a great improvement to what we have, obviously, and will allow us to do a lot of different things for citizens, tourism, things like that. Civitan Park, that's the park over by Station 41. That park has not been renovated to my knowledge since it was built. It may have had some things added to it, but it's time to renovate that. We did get a grant to do that, but the town also has some matching funds to put in there. That was actually approved in the current fiscal year that we're in, and so you'll see that in fiscal year 21-22. The other two, sun-shaded Ivy Redmond Park, and then a Ventrac mower, which is a mower basically that allows us to mow embankments. The next equipment you see, the top three there is for public services. The street department, utility truck with a bucket. This is basically a bucket truck, the one you see us using to hang Christmas decorations, to put the lights up, change street lights, things like that. We also have an automated refuse truck. This is a fancy term for a garbage truck that picks it up. You don't have to have a person do it. And then we've got a service truck in general services that if the board approves the new employee, that will be a service truck for that employee. Fire rescue department. The big item in that department is replacing the 1998 pumper truck. We're recommending that this year. The other big item, actually bigger than the pumper truck, is the renovation of Beeson's Crossroads fire station. We have an agreement with Beeson's Crossroads to renovate that fire station, and then we will jointly share that station with Beeson's. The board approved that in 2021 as well, and it's in the budget for 21-22. Then we have 2 staff vehicles to be replaced, and then some turnout gear and some SCBA bottles. Nonprofit funding for 21-22. The town, as you can see, funds several nonprofits throughout the year, and have 2 pools that money comes out of. It comes out of the general fund operating budget as well as the occupancy tax fund, which is a fund. Revenue in that fund is generated from hotel motel stays. Individuals come in, they pay an occupancy tax, and we get a portion of that tax. There is some recommended increase in funding for the different nonprofits this year. It's only the nonprofits that are funded through the general fund, none of them through the occupancy tax fund, because we didn't get any more revenue. We can't allocate more revenue than what we're receiving. We do have 3 additions to the funding this year. The Historic Preservation Society, $4,900. Salvation Army is $10,000, and Crisis Control is $10,000. I think Salvation Army and Crisis Control was a one-time funding, or it's been discussed as one time. Whether or not it's one time next year, I don't know. We'll see when it comes up. But the discussion there was that, they've really served a lot of clients this year with COVID, and they've taken a hit to their resources as well. So I think there was some discussion among the board to help give them some funding to maybe help stabilize them a little bit for what they've done this year during COVID. Tax rate of surrounding municipalities. I will say this is the tax rate. It says 1920, but it's 2021. This does not include what the tax rate in Forsyth County for those municipalities may change to. This is the current rate that they have for 2021, because most of those folks have not adopted their budget. I don't know that anybody's adopted it right now, so this is the tax rate that they currently have. As you can see, Kernersville is at the bottom of that list. If you're going to be at the bottom of a list, I guess that's probably a good one to be at the bottom of. That means that we have the lowest tax rate of any of these folks around us in the Triad area. So when people tell you Kernersville has the highest tax rate of anybody in the Triad, you can tell them, well, that's not exactly true. Kernersville's tax rate is higher, as I've told the board in the past and told the citizens. Our tax rate is higher than Walkertown, Louisville, Clemens, King, Rural Hall, all of those folks. Yes, we're higher than those folks. I won't argue with you one bit about that. So what I will say is Kernersville is the only one in Forsyth County, with the exception of Winston-Salem, that provides all of the services that we provide. You may get a lower tax rate in Clemens than what you get in Kernersville, but then when you have to pay extra every year or every month, however they do it, for garbage pickup, recycling, fire district, all of that, your tax rate's going to add up pretty close to what it is in Kernersville. So, I think Winston is looking at lowering theirs from 63.74 maybe down to 61. I think the county's looking at lowering theirs from 75 down to probably 69 or 70. I don't know about any of the folks in Guilford County. I think they will remain the same. And I have not heard yet about the ones down in Davidson County or Randolph County. Even with a good budget year like we're projecting for 21-22, we still have some concerns. The top two are our biggest concerns: growth of revenue versus expenses. Our revenues, we were lucky this year. We did see a revenue growth compared to 2021. But again, some of that's because we budgeted low in 2021. And some of it, we've just had exceptional growth. We still have a concern about that. If our revenues don't keep up with expenses, our maintenance and operating expenses are going to increase about 3 to 4% every year. We do our best at keeping those steady so that we don't have an increase, but like everything else, it just goes up. So we have to have our revenues in line with that. You hear people talk about Kernersville's growing too fast. I don't like all the growth. I get it. I understand what they're saying. But the flip side of that is, if you don't have any growth and you don't have those revenues going up to keep up with the expenses, the only way to raise revenue without growth is to raise your tax rate. So if you ask those folks that don't want any growth, okay, you don't want any growth, do you want your tax rate, instead of being 55.9, do you want your tax rate being 65.9? There's very few options for revenue growth if you're a municipality, or for revenue. You either raise your tax rate or you see building and growth. I think the board's done a great job through the years in managing that growth, making sure it made sense, controlling it, and then still having it. You have to have it. If you don't have it, you end up like all these folks that have no growth. All the industry has left the area and you're just stagnant. That's when your tax rate starts creeping up. So, it's been conflicting through the years. Boards have said we don't want growth, but they don't want the tax rate either. Some things you got to have one or the other. You just can't make it work. So that's always a concern. We try to hold our expenses in check so that if we don't have that revenue growth, we're still in pretty good shape. And I mentioned at the beginning, we don't have a capital projects budget. We are fortunate this year that, we've got a fire station, we've got a park, and we've got a rec center and a pumper truck all in the budget. That's an unusual year. That happens about once every 5 or 6 years, if you're lucky. So without that capital projects budget, is what you have to wait on is a big project to come off. You plug something in its place with a comparable payment, and then you can get it done. That leaves you really a long time in between projects. So that's always a concern. There's not too many ways or too many options to correct that, because to do that, you just got to have more revenue. And as I just explained, there's very few options to generate revenue. So that, that's always going to be a concern. But I think this budget does take some of those concerns away. If we can get the rec center, if the board approves it and we can get it under construction and get it built, that will be our last large building for a while. We've already built new public services building, built a new Station 42. So now we got the Parks and Rec building coming in, and that'll be the last big item for hopefully till I get out of here anyway, then somebody else can worry about it. And then appropriation of the fund balance of the unassigned fund. We appropriate fund balance. We try not to, but we usually appropriate it at the beginning of the year. A lot of years we don't spend it, and our fund balance actually increases at the end of the year. Some years we spend all we've appropriated and then some. Just depends. So we don't ever really like to appropriate it, but we do, and then we try to have savings throughout the year, because undoubtedly you'll have savings in some departments throughout the year, whether it's due to turnover, you just ended up not needing a piece of equipment, you didn't do a project, things like that. Actually, you may have more revenue come in, which also that helps if you save money and then you have extra revenue. That further increases your fund balance. So that's it. Be glad to answer any questions that the board may have, any questions that anyone in the public may have. Be glad to answer those as well.
Thank you, Mr. Swisher. This is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who'd like to speak in favor of the current proposed budget for fiscal year 21-22? Keith, were there any cards submitted on this issue? Okay. Seeing none, I'll ask, is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to the proposed budget for fiscal year 21-22? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Are there any questions or comments by board members at this time?
Mayor, I just have a couple. Curtis, or Mr. Swisher, has a copy of the budget been placed over at the Pattison Memorial Library? Okay, because I called today and they didn't have it. So you, okay. Well, okay. Well, I called over there and they didn't have that. And I only have a couple things. Great job, and it's a nice budget, so thank you very much. The sales and use quarterly tax. I'm looking at actual for 1920 and then 2021. It's like $1.1 difference. Are we expecting that? And is that because of the reassess? Or
No,
I'm just wondering the big difference of that $1.1 million.
Yeah, if you see there under what was approved in 2021, it was $5,564,000.
Right.
As I said, we budgeted pretty low on that, not knowing what impact COVID would have. If you'll see over there under estimated 2021, we're looking at about 6.2 million.
Right.
So we're actually, right now we're projecting that we'll collect almost $630,000 more than we budgeted for 2021. And that is, we just didn't see the slowdown in retail sales from COVID. I think it's what happened is what we saw was, folks weren't going out and shopping at $10, $15 at a time. Folks were at home. They were shopping down at Lowe's, places like that, spending $1,000 at a time doing projects they can do at home. So we based our number for 21-22, a percentage increase on what we are anticipating collecting for 2021.
Okay, so should I look at, thank you, that helps. So should I look at the 6.2 or your recommendation, the 6.6, or we think it'll come in between it?
Yeah, the departmental request for 21-22 was 6.7.
Right.
I didn't want to go quite that high, so I made it 6.6.
Okay, so
And-
somewhere between 6.2 and 6.6.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, and then if I'm looking over, so I come up with actuals of 39,000, or 39 million, I'm sorry, and I'm looking at general fund revenues, just to be on the same page. But our revised for 2021 is 42 million. Our estimate's 41, but this budget's 39. So I just, and we went from 2019 to 2020 from 34 million to 39. So that's where we are. We're not at the 42.
No, we're not at the 42. The budget being recommended is what's in the manager recommend column.
Mhm.
And the reason they change for like what was approved for 2021 was 33.6 million roughly. What's estimated, the 41.9 million, we had the sale of the tower
Right.
that brought in like $1.5 million. We had some more revenue come in from, I think, a project that wasn't budgeted that we did. Oh, it was a grant for Civitan. So when that comes in, we have to account for it, and that goes under the estimated column. But we base our numbers on the one that we're recommending is the manager recommend column.
The 39.
And yeah, the 39 million. And those numbers for expenses and revenue both are based on what was approved by you all in 2021. The other two columns, that just shows kind of the revised number of those columns. It takes into account the budget amendments, and it's easier to follow under the kind of the expenses, because when you do a budget amendment, it goes directly to that line item. And so the revised, it takes into account the budget amendments, and then the estimated takes into the budget amendments that we know to date, and then what we project going the next probably 3 or 4 months.
That could get funded or not funded. So all
Yeah.
that's in there. Well, it's just a big difference.
It is,
That's
because
what I'm asking.
and it's what happens when we do the budget in, say we do it in March. We know to that point what the revised is, but we've got to project March, April, May, June, and that's the estimated.
Okay.
So the estimated is basically, we know 8 months of it, and it's kind of a projection for the last 4. That's the
Gotcha.
difference. But we base ours on what was approved and then what I recommend.
I got you. Well, I when I see a big difference, it makes me, that's
Yeah,
a red flag. So
Yeah, and
I just
it
wanna
generally,
ask.
it pops up quite a bit in the revenues because the revenues come in so different.
Okay, and I know the capital equipment and stuff that's been listed, but there was something under the IT department where they asked for like 180,000, and it was not recommended by you. What was that? Was there something they really needed that they didn't get?
Nah.
Come on, Adam, what do you need, buddy?
I think it was broadband to the new fire station, and we probably put it in we just put it in the cost of the renovations itself.
Okay.
I think that's
Well, I
what it
just
is.
thought that
Adam,
was
is that what it was? Do you remember?
Yes, sir.
okay. I'm just making sure.
Yep.
Okay, and then under the police department, I saw under information and ammo expense, they requested 40,000. You're saying 35. I just want to make sure they have the ammo that they need, right? Because ammo is short supply right now.
Yeah, and if you see right under that one says information expense is 5. So
So you matched it up there.
yeah, that one's information and ammo, and then we got an information, so it matched up about the same.
Okay, and staying on that page, go down to the capital outlay equipment. That was a big ask of 527,000. And I know the range is in there above it at 270. What else are they missing that they might?
That was all of the cars. They were moved to the forfeiture fund. They're still in there. We
okay,
just
there's-
moved them over.
Okay,
Yeah, and the first year payment will be made from the forfeiture fund.
Yeah.
And it doesn't impact back into the operating budget.
okay, so that was the request, but
Yes,
it's.
we
okay.
just moved
But
it
you
over.
see why I'm asking the
Yeah,
question?
we just
Okay.
moved it over.
All right, and I only got, I think, 2 more. Let's see, now I'm on to the fire department. Looked like the turnout gear, 85,000 requested, we're gonna do 64,000. So, I mean, is that enough?
It's what it was some of it was where he requested 10 part-time personnel,
We gave them 5. I
5,
got
so
that one.
we changed up the turnout gear.
That makes sense, thank you. All right, and then public streets, department, there was a request for $250,000 for downtown development. I'm all about
That's the-
downtown development, tell me what that is.
That's the parking lot on North Cherry
Cherry
Street.
Street, okay,
And I think I may not have, but that's the parking lot on North Cherry Street where the town purchased the 2 houses
Right.
from Dr. Whitaker.
Yep.
The reason I put it in there, 2 reasons. Number one, we may be able to use
Right,
some of the
okay.
stimulus funds for that.
Mhm.
And number 2, in the past, we've gotten some grant money from the state for some downtown projects.
Yeah.
So if we get some grant money from the state for another downtown project, I may come back to you all later on if we receive that, when we get it, and say, hey, look, we've gotten 100,000 or 150 or whatever.
Okay.
do you want to go ahead and do the rest of it? Similar to what we did, we received $100,000 for the Founders Park, and then I think $79,000 maybe for the parking lot beside of the museum. So that's what that is to make that a parking
And
lot.
you mentioned that last week, so sorry. about
Yes, ma'am.
that.
I could not remember whether I mentioned it or not.
Yeah, you did now that you brought it up. And the last question I have is under Parks and Rec. It looked like contract services actual from 19 to year 2020 was 188,000 when we're making recommendations of 10,000 and 19. What did we need contract services during that time period for? $188,000? It's
I don't see 188,000. I see
If you look-
10,800.
I'm looking at, if you look, let's go under Parks and Rec. Let's get on the same page.
Right above dues and subscriptions.
Yeah, I got it 188, 146 on my column.
Oh, the 180, that was in 1920, and I think that was for the initial design, just the elevation design of the building.
For the Parks and Rec building?
I think
Or
that
for
is
the
correct.
park? It could have been for the
Probably
park.
was for the park, yes.
Okay.
And we
I
did
just-
not follow, we don't have it anymore, so.
Okay. Well, that
Yeah.
was just a big number for
Yeah.
that. Okay. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Swisher.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments?
I had emailed Curtis my questions and he answered every one of those, so thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So, Mr. Swisher, so the plan that the board has done the past few years has been to have the public hearing at this meeting and then give some time for the community to review the budget, consider what you have presented tonight, have an opportunity to get in touch with the board, for the board members to consider the budget. And then the vote would be later this month because we have to enact it by the 30th. So we have two meetings upcoming later this month. One is Wednesday, June 23rd. The other is Tuesday, June 29th. My understanding is we're planning to have both of them in this room, and we'll stream the meeting as we've done our streaming this meeting. So what is your recommendation as far as finalizing the budget and having it ready by the 30th as to which meeting we take this budget up again for a vote?
We can, I mean, either one works. For staff, we can have the budget ordinance ready for you to adopt on the 23rd. Since we are in this room, we could put it on the agenda for the briefing and you could adopt it then, or we can put it on the agenda for adoption at the June 30th meeting. Either one of them works for us time-wise. It's always said in the past, it's a little close if you come in here on the 30th and you don't adopt it. We have to
So
come back and do
I
something.
have that next meeting is June 29th, because on Tuesday, not the
Okay.
30th.
Well, that gives you a little extra day.
So
I'm
looking on the list that the town clerk has posted, looks like we have one on Wednesday, June 23rd and Tuesday, June 29th.
Yeah, that's correct. Either one of them works for us. As we've done in the past, if the board calls me or emails me or whatever and says, hey, I want to look at this or look at that, we can prepare 2 or 3 different budget ordinances. As I've told the board in the past, if you come in and you've got some ideas of doing something different than the ordinance we have, because you've got to adopt an ordinance. It's not just the budget. You have to adopt an ordinance, and it has to be specific in how that ordinance is structured. So if you come in and you change at the last minute and we don't have an ordinance prepared to kind of meet those changes, we would have to prepare one that night, which we could certainly do. But, I don't see it being an issue. So I'm good with doing it either night, Mayor. It makes no difference to me.
Okay. When would the board like to consider the budget?
Let me make a suggestion. I would suggest, we've not done it in the past, but if you want to, we can kind of go, and if we don't hear anything from any citizens, I can contact the board and say, hey, we've not heard anything from any citizens in favor or against. Then I would recommend just putting it on the briefing session, because we've had the workshop, we've had this meeting, you've not heard anything. You can just do it at the briefing. Then if something comes up and you want to change it, then we can have that change ready by Tuesday night.
Can I be remote at the briefing on the 23rd
I'll refer that to Curtis and John.
I
in
don't,
order to vote for that?
I
Because
don't,
I need to be remote.
I think, well, it allows for now the new, I think with the governor's order in effect, I think it still allows for an individual to vote remotely. Is that still in effect, Keith, that way?
I believe so, Mr. Swisher, because the state of emergency itself is still in effect, even though most of the restrictions have been lifted. And as long as the state of emergency is in effect, the board can have remote attendance at meetings. We'll just need to know for certain ahead of time so we can properly put that on the meeting notice.
Okay. Well, if we vote on the 23rd, I will be remote. But if you do it on the 29th, I'll be in person. I'm good either way. So I have no problem. Whatever works. Just giving you a heads up.
Either
So
one.
is it your recommendation to just decide later?
I-
As you and I work on the agenda together?
I think that's a good way of doing it. Like I said, if we don't have any concerns from anyone by the time of the briefing, then simply add it to that agenda. And we'll know, we can give it a couple of weeks and see. And if we do have some issues and somebody comes up and says, hey, I got this or got that, then we'll just add it to the regular meeting.
Okay. Is everyone okay with that? Any other concerns? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So we finished the public hearing. So we will go on to the public session. The first item on public session is speakers from the floor. And I do not have a speaker card for anyone wanting to speak from the floor, but if you are here in attendance and you would like to bring up a non-agenda item, this is the time that you can do so. Is there anyone here who'd like to be a speaker from the floor? All right, seeing none, we will move on to item 2B, which is consideration of an ordinance amending traffic schedule 5 of chapter 9 of the Code of Ordinances to add Eastover Court to the list one-way streets.
Madam Mayor, you have a memo in your packet. Eastover Court is in the Weldon neighborhood, and they're requesting adding that to our list of one-way streets in our Code of Ordinances.
There's one that was, the name had changed. Is that Eastover or is that a different one?
Madam Mayor, the ordinance reflects Eastover Court. The original memo that went with the ordinance said Eastover Drive, but that has been updated online. I received the updated memo from Mr. Hatling today.
Okay, so Eastover Court is the correct name.
That is correct for this particular ordinance.
Okay, are there any questions of Mr. Swisher? I see you're having some technical issues, Kenny. Are you okay to keep proceeding? Okay, all right. Is there any discussion or do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion by Alderman Bruce Boyer. I have a second by Alderman Kenny Cruz. All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, the next item on the agenda is consideration of an ordinance amending traffic schedule 2 of chapter 9 of the Code of Ordinances to add Adams Street to the list, 25-mile speed zones, and streets in the Weldon neighborhood to the list, 20-mile speed zone. Mr. Swisher?
Yes, this will pick up all of the streets in Weldon, drop that speed limit to 20, and it will drop Adams Street to 25. So staff has looked into that. Have no problem with either one of those.
Okay, is there any discussion or questions? Do I have a motion?
I drove those streets today. I'll be glad to make the motion to approve.
Okay, I've got a motion by Alderman Boyer. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second by Alderman Joe Penix. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, the next item is item 2D, discussion regarding parking and speed limit along Lambeth Farm Lane. And I have Carolyn Roney signed up to speak. Ms. Roney, if you'd like to come to the podium And Curtis, is the microphone on for her?
It is.
Okay. And if you could state your address for the town clerk for the records and tell us what is happening with Lambeth Farm Road.
My address is 118 Covington Cove Court, Kernersville. So Lambeth Farm is an actual public street.
Hold on just a second. Mr. Swisher, can you adjust the microphone since Adam is...
Even lower. So happens when you're short.
It doesn't, it's the problem with the microphone. It doesn't pick up in a very big range. So you really have to be right there with
Is that
it.
better?
I think so. Try again.
All right. Do you need my address again?
We're going to bring our expert in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Do you need my address again?
Please.
Okay. 118 Covington Cove Court, Kernersville. So Lambeth Farm Lane is a public road running straight through our neighborhood. And so every road that bisects or intersects with that is impacted by people coming through the neighborhood. There's also a lakeway that comes through to the big traffic circle there. We have a lot of parking issues there. People park on both sides of the road. People speed through this road. We have over 400 homes and residents in this neighborhood, we have a lot of walkers. We have a lot of people come through just to come walk through our neighborhood. We have the Pope Park that's going to be built that backs up to our neighborhood, which is why a lot of people built there. And it's just become a real danger to be out walking now. Most of our access from the sidewalk to the street and vice versa are parked over, and even our no parking areas that are painted are parked every day. So it's a safety issue. I've almost been hit several times. Kids have been hit, almost hit on bikes. Cars go around the roundabout the wrong way. People are cutting through on Lakeway to avoid all the traffic on East Mountain Street right now and all the construction there. And we would like to see possibly, we've got, I think they said 6 signs being ordered from Kernersville Police Department. Is that right? Six no parking signs from the intersections to however far that is, 25 feet, I believe, that will be installed. But we're still seeing a lot of parking where people have to come into the road before they can even get onto Lambeth from all the side roads. And it's just a real hazard to walk, drive. You can't drive on the correct sides of the roads. And as an HOA, we can't do anything because it's a public road. So we're asking to maybe get the speed limit dropped from 25 because it says subdivision wide, which was set by the city. We can't even drop our private roads down because it's set already. We would like to get it dropped to maybe 20 and get some of this parking situated. I mean, we have people just parking there all day, and it's really a hazard. So, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swisher, I think you've looked into this with some of the town staff.
Yes, ma'am. And Mr. Hatling has a brief presentation regarding that area that she was speaking of.
Hey, Mr. Hatling.
So Lambeth Farm Lane is part of McConnell development. When Lambeth Farm Lane was designed and constructed, it followed a traditional neighborhood design, a T&D, with a wide avenue street, wide planting area between the street and sidewalk to accommodate street trees and also soften up and make the sidewalk safer. Buildings pulled up near the street and on-street parking. So the design is Lambeth Farm Lane, as described above, was basically, that was the whole intent of that development. The on-street parking acts as a traffic calming device to slow traffic down on the avenue. The on-street parking is important parking provision in the development. So the concerns expressed tonight, of course, speeding, sight distance, pulling out into the Lambeth Farm Lane. So staff recommendation, which is I think identical to the homeowner association recommendation, lower the speed limit to 20 miles per hour, similar to the Weldon T&D request. T&D being that traditional neighborhood design where you're trying to encourage people to park on the street, slowing traffic down, which also helps your pedestrian movement. And then new signage as described,
to make sure people are backed off the corner so you have better sight distance. There's new signage and enforcement of parking restrictions between the intersection corners and the parking space. Be happy to answer any questions.
If you come back to the podium so that everyone can hear you with the microphone. I was wondering, do you feel like that would help address some of the concerns?
It would. We also had asked if we could get crosswalks painted on Lake at the traffic circle there, and we were told that would not be possible because it's not a business development. Because that's really where we have a lot of the issues as well. Just this complete speeding through there in the cutting through the neighborhood because it is that wide open road there. But that would help a whole lot. And we've gotten those signs, I think, ordered. I think he said within 4 weeks they'd be put up. But we're still seeing like the parking situation. Parking on the street is fine if you can get 2 cars down the road at the same time. You know, that's not a problem if you get your 2 cars going both ways. But several of us have almost been hit head on by people parking in the wrong way on the street. And I think they're coming out and trying to enforce that a little bit more. But obviously it's not a priority because there's other things for KPD to be doing. But at the same time, it's still a hazard every day. You can't come in, you can't leave. People complain to us daily about it. So here I am to answer those questions for them and help. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else have questions for Ms. Roney?
I don't have a question for you. I have a question for somebody.
Well, while she's here at the podium, though, does anyone have a question? Okay, you can sit back down. Thank you. All right, Jenny?
Yeah, thank you. Do we have any parking spots marked? I know it's a development, and I've ridden down there, and I've seen some at inside, but as far as on the street, are they marked as well?
No.
Would that help at all? Because I know my friends live down in there, and they have their own parking spot. But as far as the street, I know we did it behind Dairy Queen or the Dario, and it made a big difference by marking those spots. And I know that's a business, but I'm just trying to think.
I think the sign where it says no parking here at the corner will help. There are a lot of cars parked through there. I run through there probably 2 or 3 times a week. But I think getting those cars back from where you come out of the actual parking area onto Lambeth Farm will help about as much as anything. I mean, if you've got that sign there and they don't park beyond that sign, there's really not much need, I don't think, in marking actual parking spaces.
Okay, just thinking out loud. That's all.
The other thing I think that's important is there is a lot of parking there, but as Jeff mentioned earlier, that subdivision, that neighborhood, when it was designed, it was designed with on-street parking in mind. I mean, it was designed around that. So when if you eliminate all that parking.
No, I'm saying have the on-street parking, but have it marked.
Yeah, I don't know that marking it will help.
That way, but sometimes you got to help people.
I don't think marking it will help as long as they stay beyond that sign and don't get close to the intersection. I think you'll accomplish the same thing.
Okay.
It'll be a matter of enforcing it for a while.
At Dario, we had that issue with truck parking and trailer parking, and so I think that's helped identify specific parking spaces. We also signed that one to prevent that, but of course at McConnell we're not having that issue with trucks and trailers. So
yeah.
As Curtis mentioned, I think it will help greatly for people to back off the corners of the intersections.
Okay.
Well,
let us know.
Mr. Hatling, to Mayor Pro Tem's point, wouldn't having the spaces, they do this in Raleigh, places I've been in Raleigh and maybe some of the areas in Winston, but if it's marked, then there's that second line that gives people a visual line of how close to the curb they need to be. If they're over that line, then they know they're too far to the center of the road. And so one of the concerns is whether 2 cars can pass, whether there's 2 lanes of travel at any given time. And if folks were parked closer to the curb, that maybe painting something would give them a visual clue that they're too far into the lane of travel where they've parked. You do a lot of research on these kinds of things. Have you run into that? I know maybe the traffic calming is to have it be a little narrow of a road, but
I don't think the issue is really the parking. identified parking spaces, it's a sight distance. So I think the signage will be effective. Keeping people off from that, signage. But I have not heard any issue with identified parking spaces.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah,
The issue me and Mayor Morgan heard was the cars are parked and two cars can't go past at the same time.
and that, that's the issue of parallel parkers in America, that people have lost that skill set. They haven't got the automatic cars yet, but I think the striping is the space here, but if they're still going to go out on the road more, I don't know if that 2 lines will help them parallel park.
Let's see how the signs do. And if they don't help you, please come back. Please. Thank you.
Okay, we don't have a proposed ordinance, but if we voted, can we vote tonight on the speed limit? Or do we need to wait till there's a written ordinance?
Mayor, an ordinance must be in writing
Okay.
for the board to consider.
And staff has noted that to add an ordinance for the next meeting.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments?
You probably thought I was casing the neighborhood because I drove around last night during dinner hour, thinking this is a holiday. People are probably home getting ready to go to work the next day. There were cars parked on both sides, but I thought traffic could move fairly well. And then this morning, I spent about 45 minutes driving every street, looking at marked spaces behind the buildings, looking at the sidewalks. I think what we're proposing probably will do the job. But I think I agree with Mr. Hatling that on-street parking is needed as long as it gives you a reasonable sight distance.
Are you signed up for the notifications of when the agenda is posted? Keith, could you be sure to send her the agenda for the next meeting when we have this? It'll be the next meeting will be the 29th. So the briefing, the 23rd, will be kind of the review of the agenda. And then the 29th would be the day we would have that for consideration. Okay. All right, anything further on this? Appreciate everyone's help. Police Chief and Doran, Public Services Director, and Mr. Hatling. And of course, Town Manager Curtis Swisher. All right, the next item is consideration of a request by the Kernersville Arts and Crafts Guild to close a portion of Harman Lane for the Homegrown Arts Fest. We have Christine Gallion signed up to speak. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Christine Gallion, and I'm with the Kernersville Arts and Craft Guild. We are planning a large craft fair in Harman Park, which has been approved for use on August 28th, and we would like to close a portion of the Harman Lane for 2 to 3 food trucks.
Thank you. All right, do I have any discussion or a motion?
Am I correct that this would certainly allow that residents on Harman Lane to be able to get in and out of their driveway?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion by Alderman Boyer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Thompson. All those in favor? It's unanimous. We look forward to your festival. Thank you. All right, the next item is consideration of a resolution to declare badge and service weapon of Edward Shoemate surplus and authorized disposal. Mr. Swisher?
Yes, ma'am. Officer Shoemate is retiring, and this will allow the town to present him with his badge and his service weapon.
Do I have a motion? A motion by Alderman Thompson, second. Got a second by Alderman Kenny Cruz. All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, the next item is consideration of an ordinance for budget amendment number 8. Mr. Swisher.
Madam Mayor, I covered most of this at the briefing. I'll go over it quickly. If you have any questions, be glad to answer those. We have 5 changes in the expenditures. most of those have some offsetting revenue with those. In the inspections department, they have $101,815 to cover the remodeling of the inspections department, and an increase in the group insurance. The office remodeling will be covered by an increase in revenues, and the insurance, what happened there is one of the employees changed their coverage right after the budget was adopted. So that change in coverage increased the group insurance in that department. Police department increase of $64,000 in regular off-duty pay for the officers. You'll see an offsetting revenue source for that. The fire department, we had $69,000 to cover some increases in temporary and part-time wages. Overtime wages, most of that was associated with COVID-19. And then departmental supplies and building maintenance, they had some unexpected maintenance during the year that had to be done. And then in the engineering department, a decrease of $537,000. That's all for projects that were budgeted but not completed by the end of the fiscal year. So you'll see an increase or decrease in the revenues offsetting that as well. Be glad to answer any questions the board may have. I think we'll have one more at the very end of the year to wrap everything up.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I have none. Motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion by Alderman Thompson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I've got a second by Alderman Penix. All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, moving on to consideration of the adoption of the Onward Kernersville final report. Mr. Hatling.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan. In your packet is the copy of the final report and resolution of recommendation of adoption. Chris, I believe the chamber already adopted the final report. As you may recall, the Board of Aldermen and the mayor directed the staff to work with the chamber and staff to form citizen groups to look at updating our Kernersville 2020 vision. It was done back in 1997-98. Onward Kernersville became the theme, the name, to promote it through a lot of public participation, a citizen steering committee, citizen task force, surveys, open house. Even during the pandemic, it went quite well. And staff is happy to recommend the report and resolution as presented in your packet.
Are there any questions? Do I have a motion?
I just have a quick question. Have all the participants that participated received a copy of this, or are you waiting on us to approve it?
They have. We sent out to the final steering committee and task force the final drafts. So yes, the steering committee has reviewed it. We had a final meeting. They recommended adoption.
Right, but everybody who participated, did they get a final copy, or are you waiting on us? Because I didn't receive it until I saw it last week on the agenda. So I just want to make sure somebody else didn't miss it, because I didn't receive it. And I went back and looked.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of participants.
On the I think the last mass mailing email we did would be the final proofing from the steering committee.
Yeah, we had so many people participate and give up their time.
Right.
I want to make sure that they get to see this. So can somebody double check?
Yeah, we will, if you do adopt, it'll be sent out to everyone.
Okay.
But as far as I know, the major participants have had a chance to final proofread. And of course, the steering committee did the final vote for recommending to the board adoption.
Okay, but understand, I was one of those that went to several meetings and didn't receive it. So that means there could be somebody else out there who didn't receive it, please. Other than that, I'm good. Thank you, Mayor. And I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I was on a couple of those committees. I'll be glad to second it.
Well, Alderman Boyer, did you get that final?
Yes.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, item I, consideration of a contract for financing auditing services.
This is to, we're recommending the board approve audit for fiscal year 2021. Dixon Hughes Goodman, they've been our auditor for several years now. The board also approved their multi-year contract proposal back in April of this year, but the LGC requires it to be done annually as well. So they were awarded the contract to do it from the next 3 years or 5 years. This is approving it for fiscal year end 21.
Okay, are there any questions or do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Fulton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Thompson. All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, item J, consideration of a resolution accepting American Rescue Plan Act funds. Mr. Swisher.
As I covered at the briefing, the town is eligible and will be receiving, we're told, roughly $7.2 million in funding from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. For the town to receive that, the board must adopt a resolution authorizing acceptance of those funds. So if you don't adopt this resolution, then we can't accept it. Not sure how we're going to spend it yet, as I covered at the briefing, but the first step in doing that is actually getting the money. So if you don't want to worry about how you're going to spend it, just don't adopt a resolution, then we won't have to worry about it. But if you want a little money that you might be able to spend, we probably recommend adopting the resolution.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Fulton. Do I have a second? Second by Alderman Joe Penix. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, we are to the consent agenda. All of the following matters are considered to be routine by the Board of Aldermen and will be enacted by one motion with no separate discussion unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the matter will be removed from the consent agenda and considered under the following item. A, approval of minutes for the April 28th briefing. B, approval of minutes for the April 28th closed session. C, approval of minutes for the May 4th regular meeting. D, consideration of a lease agreement with the Senior Center for the basement of 130 East Mountain Street, the old library building. E, consideration of a lease agreement with the Women's Club for the Kernersville Community House. F, consideration of an ordinance for Forsyth County to collect Town of Kernersville taxes for 2021. G, consideration of an ordinance for Forsyth County to collect Town of Kernersville taxes for prior years. H, consideration of an amendment extending an interlocal agreement for tax collection with Guilford County. I, consideration of appointments to various boards and commissions. Is there anything that a member of our audience, staff, or citizen, resident, or visitor would like to remove from the consent agenda? Anything a board member would like to remove from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt consent agenda items A through I.
Okay, got a motion by Chris Thompson. Do I have a second? Second by Kenny Cruz. All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right. We again have an opportunity for speakers from the floor to address the board on a non-agenda item. All right, seeing none, we will move on to the town manager's report and miscellaneous.
I do not have anything, Madam Mayor.
All right, then we will move on to item 7, which is matters to be presented by the town attorney. Mr. Wolf.
Mayor, could I address the board regarding a sister city program?
Absolutely. You may do so from there or wherever you choose, Mr. Wolf.
Well, maybe I'll just do it from here. If the board would not have any objection. Otherwise, it may take me 5 minutes to get over there. It's so frustrating.
Well, and then there's the advantage of everyone here can see you too.
Well, that's true. I'm excited tonight to present something that I touched on the other night with the board at our informational session meeting, and that is a potential, if you will approve this tonight, board, of a new friend through the Kernersville Sister City program. I might start out and ask those who are with Sister City. The bunch are on vacation this week. I see Russ, who's chair of the commission. Jack Stewart. Jack just turned 90 years of age. And I can't believe that, but belated happy birthday, Jack. Jack was with us from the start. Ray Smith couldn't be here tonight. He was with us from the start. We've got Juan Avora and his son, Jacob Avora, who Juan was from Sushi Todo, El Salvador. And Juan and his son are both members of the Sister City Association. Ernie is not here. He's sick. Who else is here from, I can't see. Diane. Diane is with the association. Anybody else with Sister City Association? Well, we, meaning the Sister City Commission, which you all appointed some years ago, back in 2003 when you established it, and the association, which began the same year as a 501c3 association, and which this board has supported all through the years. We've had, I think, a wonderful Sister City relationship. Furtwagen in Germany, Dashi in Taiwan. We've taken trips to, I've been twice to Taiwan. Russ, others have been, and it's been a wonderful experience. We've had those folks here. And now we have the opportunity to join as our friend the town of Sushi Todo in El Salvador, Central America, be a new place in the world for us, and I think a wonderful leap forward. I've sent out what's entitled a proclamation. It's really a resolution and proclamation. If you all sign it and approve of it and sign it, and then Sushi Todo does, it I guess becomes a proclamation, but it's a resolution of this board. And the mayor has agreed to work with us some on the technicalities, as has Keith, our town clerk. And if you would agree to approve of this friendship, I would appreciate the board staying just for a minute and executing 3 copies of this. I'd appreciate those with the association staying around and doing the same. As you can tell, I'm in great anticipation that this board will approve such. It's, this goes back to the days of President Eisenhower. Yes, Curtis, I remember President Eisenhower well. In fact, I have a piece of correspondence from him. But in 1959, President Eisenhower started this program, Sister Cities. Then it was called Town to Town. And it's grown through the years to where there are sister cities all over the world, city to city, the friendship, camaraderie, sharing the cultural aspects, educational aspects, business aspects of each town and or city with another. And there are some of our fellow towns and cities in North Carolina that have several sister cities. I'm excited because I am going to join Chris Thompson with Juan, Jacob, and families, and we're going down to Sushi Todo on the 11th, next Friday. Not this Friday, but the following Friday. And we will go down there, and again, if you extend this olive branch to Sushi Todo, we will present this to the mayor of Sushi Todo, and I might just say that The mayor just took office as of May 1st, came in, might say, on the coattails of the new president of El Salvador, the new president offering up great hope to those folks in El Salvador, getting rid of the drugs and gangs and so forth that has been prevalent with in years gone by. It's now being cleaned up. The graft that has been there being done away with. And so kind of a new regime, if you will, coming in with the different mayors and folks that are in their parliament, and the president, President Bucco himself. Just great hope for this country. Sushi Toto, excuse me, I can tell you, is a delightful, small town, probably the size of Kernersville in the 1960s, 70s, more along those lines. We've grown so much in the last couple, 3 decades that, but it was about that size. A lot of agrarian usage, but the town itself sports banks, beautiful cathedral, many restaurants and businesses, shops, and so forth. Town hall. They just are building onto the town hall, an extension, and hopefully when we're there, we will see the new part of that. Kernersville Sister Cities Association has also been working on something to present to Sushi Toto. I will tell you that there is no fire department in Sushi Toto. The closest fire department is 45 minutes away in the capital city of El Salvador, San Salvador. And of course, if something caught fire, it, never make it for the fire department to get there. And so, talking with Juan has felt that one thing that Kernersville could really do for Sushi Toto and for the surrounding towns, and just like we have Colfax and King and so forth surrounding us, they have small towns surrounding them as well. And none of them have any fire apparatus. And so we've kind of undertaken a mission, and that is to help them start a volunteer fire rescue squad in Sushi Toto. And we are working with our fire chief, who has just been wonderful to work with. We're searching for a vehicle that we might be able to send down to Sushi Toto to start this volunteer fire department. And we're looking for donations from both volunteer fire departments and city fire departments of gear, of anything that they might have that they could share with this effort, as well as individual monetary donations. It's going to cost us something for the truck, cost us something to get it there, to ship it down there. You can't just drive a fire truck some several thousand miles, so it'll have to be shipped down there. But we are on this mission, and I'll tell you, we've already raised over $4,000. So we've got a start to it, and we're real pleased with that. We will be meeting with as I say, the mayor of Sushi Toto, and he is aware of the tender of this offer by the Sister City Commission and Sister City Association, and hopefully the Board of Aldermen tonight. And we would be executing the papers with Sushi Toto while we are there. And then we would put together a delegation from the Sister City Association here in Kernersville and going down to Sushi Toto this fall to visit there. We've talked with Chief Alderman about the possibilities, and hopefully this could become reality, of 2, 3, 4 of our firefighters from here going down there, and some folks from down there coming up here and interacting with the fire department here. There are lots of things that can be done with Sister City programs. They're for not just for the adults, they're for the youth. They're for internet today, in person, visitations. There are all kinds of things that can take place in the programs of Sister City as they exist today. I'll be glad to answer any questions that the board may have. With the mayor's permission, if anybody in the audience might have a question, be glad to answer. But I would appreciate very much your consideration of the resolution and proclamation that I put together that's attached here. And I will tell you that that is of foremost importance. And the folks you have no idea how the folks in Sushi Toto take this with a town, city like Kernersville, extending this kind of proclamation, resolution and proclamation, offering a friendship to them and offering something such as fire rescue that they just have never seen. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Answer any questions you might have.
What's the approximate square mileage of Sushi Toto?
I wish you hadn't asked me that. Juan, I know in my mind, but I couldn't tell you, and I'm not sure. Juan, do you know square miles? We don't. It'd be square meters, wouldn't it?
We have kilometers.
Kilometers rather. I didn't mean meters. I meant kilometers. It's a good size, but I can't answer that right off the bat. But I will find out the answer, if not before the end of the meeting, certainly by tomorrow. And I'm dealing with someone who has become a friend, Juan Ramon, who has been working down. He's an attorney and has been a friend of Juan's here. And got it there? How many? 172 square miles. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. What's Kernersville? I would ask you that, wouldn't I? And I tell you, I just ran some stuff about that's how many?
17.89.
17?
The town limits is very small.
Square, yeah. And let me say that may be the larger area. There's a lot of farmland. It's very much like we had here before we became so urban. But back when we had the tobacco farms and so forth, those are all surrounding the downtown of Sushi Toto. I'm surprised that it's that large. Amazed it's that large. But I'll take you. What's that? Yeah, I'm surprised. Yes, I am as well.
We're going to have to buy more than one fire truck.
Yeah. But anything that they, when you haven't had anything, then whatever you can get is a blessing, and it will be for that community. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much, Mayor and Board. I appreciate it. And again, I would very much appreciate your approval of that before you tonight.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Alderman Thompson. Do I have a second? Second by Alderman Kenny Cruz. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Appreciate everyone's hard work. So do you want to set up a signing table somewhere in the room? All right. So after the meeting, whoever is signing this, we'll set it up on the town manager's table. And everyone who's signing it knows they're signing it, right, John? Or do you want to go through the list?
Yes, ma'am. Well, no, I mean, if everyone from up here and all those sister city members would come forth after the meeting and sign, sure would appreciate it. We'll sign 3 copies of it.
Super. Thank you. Again, appreciate everyone's efforts in this regard. Very excited about it. I'm sure Ernie would like to be here. He was very excited about this as well. So, okay, perfect. All right. So, John, did you want to say anything about the Kernersville Museum lease tonight?
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Did you have anything else like the Kernersville Museum lease or anything, any other matters?
No, I think we'll have something. You have got that. Did you? Mayor, the lease is done. I think it's in between the attorneys and Curtis's office. But the lease is done. It's a lease between the town of Kernersville and the museum. It's for the museum property on West Mountain Street, for the annex property on South Cherry Street, and for the property on Botenhammer Street, known as the Depot. And it's a year's lease for $1. Be glad to answer any questions that, if you want to see that, Curtis said he could print it out. I will tell you, it's very much like what we have with Women's Club, and maybe.
Should we put it on the agenda for the 29th, Ben?
I'm sorry?
Should we put it on the agenda for the 29th? The meeting?
I think we have it running from July 1st until June 30th. So we could put it on for the 29th.
Okay.
If you all would like to see a copy of it, we'll do that. We'll have it to you in the next few days.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We are to matters to be presented by the mayor and Board of Aldermen. Alderman Thompson.
I have nothing, thank you.
We wish you well in your travels.
Thank you very much, very exciting.
Please bring John back with you.
That's questionable.
I said to please bring you back with him. Like, don't leave him there. We need him.
We'll see how he acts while we're there.
You can let him stay an extra week or two, but don't come back. We need you back for the big Kernersville birthday celebration. All right. So, no comments. Mr. Cruz?
I just like to wish Chris and John well. Both of them are sort of looking old. I hope they'll enjoy a little vacation time, and we can get them back in to do business here in the big city of Kernersville.
Mayor Pro Tem Colton?
Mayor, I just have a couple things. Mr. Swisher, I just sent you an email that I got last week. And if you'll copy me on that, it's about an animal shelter possibility in Kernersville. Not sure how to answer that, so I'll let you help. And then a big thank you to the Kernersville Fire Department, Police Department, and Public Service, and our town officials, Curtis, Keith, and Beth, and everybody who came out to support East Forsyth
girls softball make it to the state championship. It was a big deal. It was great. And y'all really know how to make a team, and kids feel special. So I just want to say thank you. It was wonderful. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to express my appreciation to you, Juan, for your involvement in this and helping to make this happen. Everybody's really excited about this effort and delighted at the prospect of another sister city for Kernersville.
Thank you so much. We are happy with that.
Thank you. All right. Alderman Boyer?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Penix? Thank you. All right, if there is no further business before this board, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, so it's, Keith, did you get it? Thompson and Boyer? All those in favor? It's unanimous. This meeting is now adjourned.